I think a lot of us are paralyzed by the decision-making process, and especially young folks. And again, I'll use the word daunting because a lot of our decisions in life can be daunting, is figuring out what you want to do with your life, whether it's a career or my fitness path or whatever. Is nothing is permanent. As long as I can keep moving, then there's forward progress.
It's really important to be flexible in your approach to fitness. Just because one thing is not working right now at this moment doesn't mean that you stop, doesn't mean that you give up. There's always a way to keep going. Thank you so much for joining me today. Health in the Real World.
It's the Health in the Real World podcast. It's time to start the show with Chris Janke as your host. Here to give you everything that you need when it comes to fitness strategies. We keep it simple and easy. It's your roadmap to get healthy. You don't need equipment and you don't need a gym. Just the right strategies to get you fit and trim.
Health in the Real World podcast brought to you by My Core Balance. This is my business right here. We have abs and obliques, we have arms, we have full body, all these different color-coded exercise programs, beginner, intermediate, advanced. Go to mycorebalance.com, enter promo code podcast to get 10% off of your monthly membership. Thank you so much for joining. And now here is Lorri Lee Lown. Welcome to Health in the Real World podcast. We're here today with Lorri Lee Lown from Savvy Bike in Willow Glen. Lorri, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure, my pleasure. So let's get started right away, and we'll get a chance to introduce you and learn about you as well. We want to first start with our number one question, which is, what do you recommend to somebody as far as being like the number one, or maybe you have two or three, that's fine too, sort of starting points for a health or fitness regimen? How do you get somebody started with something like that?
It's daunting because we think of the end result, which is often very far from where we are right now. And I have to remind myself of this as well, which is if I can just move my body every day, it has such a positive effect. If it's 20 or 30 minutes, whether it's a walk or a bike ride, dancing in the kitchen, whatever it is, if I can just move my body, that allows me to improve my health in significant ways. And I think that's the one thing, especially as an athlete, we find we're very all or nothing. I want to go out and ride 100 miles, but maybe my body's not there. So I'm going to hop on my bike and commute for 30 minutes instead.
I like how you mentioned how it can seem very daunting, right? Because we're focused on the end result. And I've noticed that a lot with people who are just starting. They're seeing the celebrities or the Instagram mini celebrities, and they're comparing where they are now to that. Right. As opposed to just saying like, what is step number one that I need to do? And I really like that you said that. Move every day, go on a small bike ride or a small walk or something like that. It's very important. What do you see as far as people who come into your bike shop? Do you typically see people who have been doing this for a while, just need an adjustment, or do you see a lot of newbies coming in there? What kind of person is coming into your store typically?
Well, this year's been really interesting because who knew we would have a bike boom because of COVID? So there's been a global bike shortage, a shortage of bicycles and components and parts. Bike shops are backlogged 4 to 6 weeks for labor. So the folks that I'm seeing now are very different than the folks I used to see. I used to see folks who were competitive cyclists and recreational cyclists who were doing endurance events, so long events where comfort is super important and performance is super important. Now I'm seeing folks who have just gotten a bike for the first time in 20 years. And some of them get brand new bikes, and some of them pull out the 30-year-old bike out of their basement and have to dust off the tires and get moving again. And I think it's been pretty incredible. I reopened mid-July and my calendar has been booked solid pretty much ever since, without even announcing I was opening. So people are riding bikes, which is great. And I think people have a lot more time on their hands because they're not commuting by car anymore, which sucks up a lot of time. So it's allowing them to recreate more.
So that's really interesting because I did hear that bike stores are super sort of backlogged, right? Like you said, 4 to 6 weeks. Why? So do you think it's just the free time component? What do you think is behind that? Is it just that our lifestyle has changed so much that people really, they just don't even need their cars. And now they're like, well,
Right.
I can ride 1 mile to the grocery store on my bike and things like that. Do you think that's the main
Exactly.
reason?
Well, and I also think we were locked down into our homes, and we were given the message that the only safe thing to do was to be outside. So folks who normally would go to restaurants or go to the mall or do all of these other activities, what I see in my neighborhood is people are walking. We started walking every morning. It's like we're athletes, but we're walking for half an hour to an hour a day. And there was one point when I've been running for the last year and my hip was giving me some issues, and I decided to take a break from running, and I was walking 10 miles a day, which is just crazy to me, and got in magnificent shape just from doing that, which again, as an athlete, sounds like something, really old people do. So what I see are kids are riding their bikes, adults are riding their bikes, people are walking, they're spending time in our little neighborhood park. And I'm hoping, especially because a lot of the corporations have already announced that they're not going back until at least next July. And I think we will probably see a very dramatic difference in how we do business in Silicon Valley. I'm hoping that this sticks. It seems to, even after the last month of having bad air quality, people are now back on their bikes again.
People are
And
back on
I
the bike.
commuted.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't commute by bike for the last month because the air quality was so bad. And so today was my first day commuting again. And it was great because people are out there and they're out and about. And that's awesome to me.
Yeah. I think that's
Off the
fantastic.
computers. Well, I think
Yeah.
the computer is the other issue, right? So we're all Zooming.
Right.
People who have real jobs, unlike you and I, are in meetings all day long on
Yeah.
Zoom. And the kids are now taking classes on Zoom. And I think we are seeing this sense of fatigue of being online, screen fatigue, if you will.
Right.
And so anything that they can do to get outside is really awesome. And they're leaving their phones home. They're not out there walking around with their face buried in their phone. They're walking and talking and spending time with other people. So that's a good thing.
I think that's great. That's one of the themes of this show is with a lot of the guests is doing things to get yourself healthy and fit that are fun. And I love how you said that you started walking and you got in great shape and you're already like an athlete. You're already used to riding probably dozens of miles on a bike, and you're just walking and you're getting in shape. And I think that's a really important message to really hit home, is that if you're not doing anything or you want to do something, just go walk, and
Right.
just start somewhere. And it's amazing how powerful walking is. And then, like you said, riding your bike with friends, going to walk in the park, and, different things like that.
And for a while, when we were first in shelter in place, riding a bike, which is my primary sport, didn't feel okay to me. Yeah, I felt like, what if I crashed and I was going to take resources from the hospitals because the hospitals were going to be strapped with COVID patients, or there was nowhere to stop. So going out for a 6-hour ride, there was nowhere to refill a bottle. There was nowhere to use a restroom. So it didn't feel okay. And going on the mountain bike trails, there were too many people walking. So I didn't feel comfortable riding bike because you were in close proximity. Many of our trails here are single track, right? So they're very narrow. So yeah, walking, and then I was able to run again. So that's become I have a loop in my neighborhood that I do several times a week. And that's become my sport, which is different.
That's perfect. You adapted to the situation. You said, well, I can't do this, so no biggie, I'll just do this. And it becomes just very fluid. I think that's something that for you and me, as far as the mindset, right? It's like, there's just no option of me sitting at home on the couch and doing nothing. Right. It's like something is going to happen, right? Either I'm going to bike ride, I'm going to run, I'm going to do 100 push-ups in the park, whatever it is. I'm just, something's going to happen. And the body is really designed for movement, every day.
Right. And but the hardest thing is starting, as you mentioned earlier. It's gaining that momentum when you go from rest to movement. And it's interesting, there's an analogy there with, riding a bike or running. It's the biggest expenditure of our energy, physical energy, is acceleration, right? To go from rest to movement. Right. And I think it's probably also the biggest mental barrier, right? It takes a lot of mental energy to get yourself up that extra half hour or lace the shoes up. We always have a lot of excuses.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
I need new running shoes. I can't run until I get those new running shoes.
Right. The best excuse that I've ever heard was, that somebody, so they said, Chris, I really want to start with you. I want to start working out with you, but I'm not really in good enough shape yet to start working out with you. And I just look like, what do you think I do? Like, that's what I help you with. So, and I can't fault him too much, because I get the mindset, right? It's almost like you want to have some sort of level of accomplishment before, maybe I take you to the next level. But really, I think that's one important differentiator is like, and you can probably fit somebody for a bike who hasn't ridden in 20 years. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, all right, come in and you can ride a half a mile today and then rest. And then you might even be sore and you can't do anything tomorrow, but in 2 days you ride another half mile. And before you know it, you're going to be up to 5, 10, 20 miles a day.
Right.
No problem, right? Just start somewhere. I think that is a very important concept.
Well, and I also teach skills clinics. So I'm teaching people how to ride and ride better. And one of the things that I always tell my folks is allow yourself permission to be a beginner. Being a beginner is super cool, right? When you've been riding, I've been riding a bike now 23 years. And when you ride 23 years, not only are you aging, but you've really plateaued, right? So I have to work hard not to get slower and not to lose endurance and not to lose muscle mass and gain fat, right? But as a beginner, every ride is a PR. You can go longer, you can ride faster, you feel more confident, you can climb hills. So during that first 3 to 5 years, you're always improving, and embrace that. You don't have to be perfect when you start. And I think that's a difficult challenge for many people, especially here in Silicon Valley, where everyone is such a high performer. They're all used to being really proficient at whatever they do. And now you're riding a bike and you feel a little foolish because everybody else makes it look easy and it's hard for you. So.
Right. Great point. Yeah. And I think that's where the excitement, I think, comes in is those beginner years. Like you said, 3 to 5 years. It's wow. I did this just last month. Whereas like you said, you've done it 20 years, you've hit plateaus. I feel that way with weightlifting. It's like, I've been lifting weights since I was 14 and I'm not pushing pedal to the metal. Like I'm trying to get bigger because I'm like, I've done that like 6 different times in my life. And I'm just, I'm good. Like, can we stop? So
last year I decided I was going to run. I will never stop riding a bike, but I started getting a little bored and felt like, I'm 55. I felt like I was plateauing physically and I didn't like the shape of my body and I didn't like the energy level I had. And so I decided, what would happen if I just ran and lifted? And the lifting is kind of, because of COVID, I have a hard time doing it at home, but the running has continued. So I started in October. I ran my first half marathon in February, and I had a half marathon every month scheduled, which of course hasn't happened because everything now is virtual. And it was interesting because I got to apply all the same training principles and physiology from the bike world and from racing bikes for all these years to now running. And it was fascinating to me. And also because I have an interesting history with some biomechanics issues. So that's been a way for me to learn how to take this old body and do something that's pretty hard and intense and survive. So.
And like you said, you're going to have those beginner's gains. Your body's going to be less efficient, which means you're going to be burning more calories. And like you said, if you want to gain muscle, lose fat, that's a good way to do it. One thing that I decided to do, I think it was like March 10th. It was like a week before lockdown. I decided to do jujitsu. I wanted to sign up for jujitsu. So I've been looking at the jujitsu studio. All right, when you guys opening? When you go? And I hear that is the most humbling thing in the world. You're just getting your butt kicked every single day by like 8-year-old kids who get you in the headlock, and you're like, ah. But I just think it's so cool as far as like how to move. You're moving your body in all these different ways, trying to get, submit the other person. And it just seems so interesting to me and so different from what I've done. So I definitely agree with you that trying new things and keeping it fresh is super important.
I think it's one of the reasons why, as we have pivoted and now we're seeing fitness at home for many folks, why platforms such as Peloton has been so popular, because it's not just a bike and it's not just a treadmill. They have bar classes and strength classes and a variety of things. And as much as we like to believe that as athletes we're in amazing shape, we're not. We've been doing one thing for a really long time, so we're good at that one thing, but that's not necessarily good for our functional fitness. I mean, I have so many weaknesses from riding a bike and being in that position for 20 years that now I need to correct everything. And that's been an interesting process. And I think folks who do a variety of things overall for general health are much more fit than those of us who do stupid long endurance stuff or one sport all the time.
I agree. I ran cross country and track in high school, 3 years. Oh, wow. Just tons of injuries. And you just get so good at that one motion.
Mm-hmm.
And we would, 16 years old running 55 miles a week. It was nuts. Right. But you get really good, you get really fast, and that's about all you can do for a while.
Right.
So Lorri, I want to give you a chance to go a little bit big picture with this. So, we talked very specific biking and running and different modalities of fitness. I would say, let's imagine you were invited to be the keynote speaker at a college graduation. You're given the commencement address. What kind of big picture sort of life advice, and you can weave health and fitness into this, but bigger picture kind of life advice, what would you tell the graduates as far as how to approach, like, a good positive mindset, how to approach life with that?
Well, and I would say is there's no one path. And I think that's what I found. I have had 3 distinct careers, 2 of them quite long. And I'm now in school again for the 4th time studying physical therapy. And so I think what I've learned is there's no one path that will lead you to your end place, which the end place is the same for all of us, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
That each path and each decision that we make just builds upon everything else that we've done. And having the courage to make those decisions, which I think keeps us fresh and keeps us intelligent, is really important. I think, and it's interesting, I'll think of a mountain bike analogy, which is when you choose a line on a technical mountain bike ride, you need to commit to that line. And if you don't commit, bad things usually happen, like you end up in the dirt. And I think that's really important, because once I've made a decision, I want to give it everything that I can, but I know that it's not my final decision. I think a lot of us are paralyzed by the decision-making process, and especially young folks. And again, I'll use the word daunting, because a lot of our decisions in life can be daunting, is figuring out what you want to do with your life, whether it's a career or my fitness path or whatever. Is nothing is permanent. As long as I can keep moving, then there's forward progress, hopefully, unless I'm treading.
Yeah, I think that's really good that you bring up that commitment, as far as making a decision, because it is hard. And I think one reason it's hard is because you are saying no to a lot of things as you say yes to this one or these 2 things, and you're basically saying no to everything else. I remember one of the words that I think was literally the word that I heard the most as a child was potential. And right. I remember hearing coaches and uncles and aunts and just, my parents saying, you have so much potential, right? And potential basically means I have a certain skill set and I can apply it to a whole wide variety of things, right? And that potential, I think when you make a decision, you're almost like killing your potential, because you're saying, I'm going into this and there's no potential for anything else, at least right now, right? Because, you can always change careers, like you said, like you did. But right now, I have no potential as a lawyer, because right now I'm a personal trainer, right?
Right.
That's 0. So I think it's really interesting. I think that's a good, using it, life as an analogy for fitness and vice versa. Sometimes we have to make decisions that are difficult and means cutting off other options. Lorri, I'd like to give you the chance to plug your business. I mentioned you're in Willow Glen, but give us your website, phone number, whatever other information you want as far as how somebody can get in touch with you for bike fittings or for your technical classes and things like that.
Sure. I have a brand new bike fit studio here in Willow Glen. And you can find me on savvybike.com and schedule a bike fit or sign up for a clinic or just contact me and talk bikes. So I've been part of the cycling community for over 20 years and I'm super invested in seeing people succeed. So I encourage you to reach out and find me.
Lorri Lee Lown, thank you so much for joining me today on Health in the Real World. Really appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for listening to the Health in the Real World show. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Visit mycorebalance.com to learn more.